Well, hello, friends, and welcome once again to another episode of the 360 Experience podcast. And I am your host, Tim Brahim. And today's guest needs no introduction, that's for sure. He is easily the most well-known man in the mortgage industry, and this is the third time that he has been my guest on this show. It's been about a year and 2 months since I last had Barry Habib in the 360 Experience, and a lot has happened to him in his life since then. As most of you know, he has been battling a very aggressive form of cancer, and I'm really thrilled as his friend to say that he's winning that battle. He is currently in remission. We're going to talk a little bit about his journey and what he's learned from going through this process along the way. And in particular, how to compartmentalize your thinking and not be so absorbed with the negativity that we all experience in life. His circumstances, of course, an extreme version of that. We're also going to talk today about the financial markets and what Barry sees heading into this new year of 2026, as well as his new role as a board member with Fannie Mae, which is an unbelievable honor and certainly one that is well deserved. I personally am honored not only to have Barry on the show, but also to call him a friend. Over the last 3 years or so, he and I have become much closer than we were prior to. And it is in that experience for me that I've been able to witness a man who has unbelievable courage and bravery, a positive mindset, and really an ability to lead and to lead in his life. Before we get to my conversation with Barry, I want to just say thank you to all of you for being subscribers to the show. I want to remind you, if you're not a subscriber, to please do so. Forward this episode on to a friend if, in fact, there's somebody that you think would benefit from listening to it. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, the Loan Atlas, for hosting the show, sponsoring the show, and for all of the wonderful impact that the Loan Atlas is having on loan originators all across the country, including the unveiling of its new AI-generated business planning tool. If you haven't checked out the Loan Atlas, you most definitely should. Finally, I'd also like to let you know that we are starting to review and accept applications for my Leadership 360 coaching program, the signature program that I do every year where we only take 12 new clients annually. We're beginning that interview process. This is the only private coaching that I do, and we would love to have an opportunity to get to know you. So in the show notes, you can click on the link and apply if you'd like to be a part of the next group. And now, without further ado, my friends, my conversation with Barry Habib in the 360 Experience. What's up, brother?
I'm good, buddy.
Yeah, give me an update. I mean, the last time that you were on the show was, believe it or not, over a year ago, like a year and a half ago. And a lot's happened in your life since then relating to your health. And I'm sure that everybody would love to know your progress.
What a crazy journey. Double hit B cell lymphoma is a very, very nasty cancer. And there's something called the P53 mutation, TP53 mutation, that makes it much more complicated and resistant. I've learned so much about this. It's crazy. And, whatever obstacle anyone is facing, I think the most important thing to do is to become as educated as you possibly can, and as to ask so many questions, go really deep, use the tools of AI that are available. You have to really understand. I mean, I talk to so many people, they all think I'm a doctor. So the thing is that now I understand that, you start off when you have cancer, you get this, you don't know what the hell to do. So, the doctors all use this standard of care. So I went through this horrific chemo regimen. I was depleted, wiped out, the whole thing. But this chemo regimen, I had to have a bag for 5 consecutive days of constant infusion to the port here, and do that a couple of weeks off, and then do that again 6 times. So it really beats the hell out of you. And then to find out it didn't work was like unbelievably heartbreaking, but you have to come from a place of gratitude. You have to have a positive outlook. You have to just, okay, we got this shitty news. We got this problem that you have to deal with. You can't fall apart and crumble because too many people depend on you, and you got to, you just got to suck it up and be strong and pull it together. Whatever this is, for me, it was this. And obviously there's other things too, but everybody is facing something, or a loved one that's facing something. So the first thing is, you you got to stay strong. You got to stay focused, because that's the only way you could pull yourself together to take the next steps to keep educating yourself so that you could win. And then after that, the next step was, okay, we do this thing called CAR T. They take your T cells, they kind of juice them up, and then they put them back into you so that you could fight the cancer with these T cells. They also condition you with radiation too to knock down the cancer. The thing was this big, and you can't cut it out because it's hematological. So it's in your blood. So it's systemic. It's not like you could just go in and cut it out and that's it. So they have to treat it systemically. The CAR T didn't work. And, another heartbreaking call. You talk about just mental anguish and like the disappointment. And the reason probably why it didn't work was because the chemo and the radiation beat the shit out of my T cells so much. Your police system is, you got B cells, neutrophils, you got T cells and natural killer cells. Those are like the policemen that are out there trying to kill stuff. And we all kind of create cancers anyway. Thing of it is, our body's in there with natural killer cells and with T cells, and it attacks it and it kills it. And then if there's bacteria or other viruses, your B cells, your neutrophils, they go out there and they do the job too. Well, the treatments that I had wiped out all my B cells, but they really beat the shit out of my T cells too. So I was going in there with these T cells that were not really effective, and it didn't work. So, now you start to kind of get thin on the options that you have afterwards, which is really freaking scary, Tim. I got to tell you, it's scary. I know I'm giving you a long update, but there's a point to it. And so I start this other treatment. It's called glofitamab. And it's really interesting, Tim. The glofitamab, it's like a bird dog. It finds where the cancer is, and it's called an engager. So what it does is it says, okay, hey, T cell, come here. The cancer's here. I'm going to take you. I have no freaking idea. I mean, think about brilliant scientists that make this work. It takes the T cell and brings it to the cancer cell, which is more targeted. I'm taking this other oral drug. You take it for 2 weeks on, 1 week off. It's called lenalidomide. And this drug, what it does, it's an immunomodulator. So it slows the growth of any cancer cells, which gives the T cell more chance to fight, because you kind of weaken the cancer as well. And this got me into remission, but there's another aspect to it, is that just by chance, and this is the thing, Tim, is look, I'm a very spiritual person, so I just think it's like the hand of God that's doing this. But just by chance, because it's important. I remember Jim Rohn, great speaker. And I know I'm a little all over the place on this, but there's just so much. So Jim Rohn, he's a mentor to Tony Robbins. I've had a few dinners with him when he was alive. Just an amazing speaker, amazing mentor. And he said something. He says, you have to attend the gatherings. You have to attend the gatherings. And when you do, you have to make sure that you go out of your comfort zone and you meet people and you make connections. He says that's where the magic is. So, Tim, through connections and through friendships, I see this Tucker Carlson interview with Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, and it was about T cells, and it was about, how you can invigorate T cells and how it really is a real important thing in killing cancer. And just recently, it was on News Nation for a very big special that I suggest that people, watch it. I hope to God nobody gets touched by this terrible, terrible disease. But it's very, very interesting. So just by chance, I'm talking to people and I said, yeah, wow, did you see that thing with Patrick Soon-Shiong? Like, kind of blew my mind, wish I could possibly get in touch with him. It's got to be like impossible. Somebody says, I think this guy, Joe Pizza, who I think he did some business with Patrick. Sure enough, just again, the hand of God, just Joe, I speak to him. He says, yeah, I'll put in a call to Patrick. Nobody can even talk to this guy. And even in the special, he says he gets thousands of requests. He says, I wish I could help people. But he puts me in touch with Patrick. Guy's a sweetheart. I start going out to LA, and you know this because you've met me. You've been so kind. We've had dinners together. I have to go out to LA now. The protocol's every 3 weeks just for a shot. It's a subcutaneous shot. The duration of it is literally 10 seconds. It's like, okay, pull your shirt up, blink, blink, blink. That's it. You don't even need a bandage. You don't even feel the damn thing, but that's it. So, 6 hours there, 6 hours back for this. But you talk to them, they do some labs and this and that, but it's more to it. But essentially that's how I'm going there for the shot. They have to do it because it's not approved. It's approved for bladder cancer. But what it does is it gets your T cells and your natural killer cells boosted. And that's what I needed. And that has put me into remission. So I've been in remission since May. Tim, I feel freaking great, invigorated, but you celebrate quietly because this is a shitty cancer. It comes back, a lot. So we're going to start this new protocol where they're going to give me natural killer cells infused to me. You got to go there every week, which, I got to go out to LA like every week for 3 weeks. Then you get a week off and you do that for a few months. But we're hoping that this could push the remission deeply. You monitor, you're going to have to do scans, but this is all to say a few things. One is if you draw upon it, regardless of what you're facing, you will be amazed at how much inner strength that you have. And I watch people fall apart sometimes. And it's like, I know it's hard, but you got to pull it together and you got to be strong. 2, you have to, whatever it is, and in everything, you've got to educate yourself because no one's going to be your advocate. And 3, nurture new relationships. You never know how it could literally save your life. And it could save your business. It could save your life. So fortunately, these are things that I've always done and come from a place of gratitude always because, I'm very spiritual. So I pray every morning and I always say, thank you, God, for this dream life, even while I was going through it, because it truly is. Because if you look at the things that you have, and if you look at how much you have, even with the obstacles, it is so, so amazing. And if you keep that attitude, if you keep that focus, and if you draw upon the strength, I'm not saying I won because God knows this thing could come back and it could be problematic and I could have limited options, but I've gotten further than the odds would have gotten me. So I am for that very grateful.
As am I. I'm grateful as well that you're doing much better and you look fantastic. I want to go into a couple of things that you shared there. So inner strength. How does one draw upon their inner strength in your estimation based upon what your experience has been? Because for so many people, it's much easier to fall victim, right? Like to move into a state of victimhood, like, woe is me, this is what's happening. I don't mean to make light of anyone's plight. Life is tough, but boy, it doesn't get a whole lot tougher than what you've been through. And you figured out a way to stay mentally strong. How did you do it? Is there anything that you'd suggest to people?
So a couple of things I'll just point to, and then let's talk about it. So the day that I was diagnosed was February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2024. And I had a webinar to do that afternoon, like 4 hours later for 5,000 people. I did it. I pulled it together and I compartmentalized it and did it. And it was not easy, but you'd be amazed at what you could do if you could just compartmentalize things in your brain and prioritize them instead of being consumed. When I found out the news, of course, getting diagnosed, and then subsequent to that, there was a lot of tests and every one of them was a shitstorm. I found out it went from bad to worse to worse to worse to worse to the type of cancer, the P53 mutation. Like it just kept getting freaking awful. Everyone was a heartbreak. The scans, everyone was bad. The chemo, which I thought September 3rd was my PET scan 2024 after this horrible chemo. I thought it was going to be like, okay, I'm done, right? And then to find out it didn't work, then to find out the freaking CAR T didn't work. Those phone calls, they were Zoom calls with the docs. I can't tell you how bad it was, but you know what I did? I had, I like to use one of these like little remarkable things. I said, okay, it's bad. What's the next steps? What do we have to do now? And I would get a list. What's the next treatment? What are we going to do? What's the plan? And I think when we get these setbacks, Tim, when we get the adversity, my natural inclination is, okay, now what do we do? And I think people can get absorbed by that. Now it's okay. Look, if you're absorbed by it, it sucks. It sucks. But you have to think about the steps of what you can do next. You can't go backwards. You always have to look ahead. And the fact of the matter is, I don't have the luxury of feeling sorry for myself too much because too many people depend on me. I have my kids, I've got grandkids, I've got Rosa, too many people count on me. My employees, our community in the mortgage industry, too many people count on me. So I can't just fall apart. I can't just feel sorry for myself. So just that thought process is, what do I need to do next to make progress? And if you were to ask me, to try and define happiness in a single word, I'd say progress. Whatever your goal is, if you're making progress to that goal, you're feeling happier. So for me, even with devastating news, it's like, okay, so what is the plan? What is the next treatment regimen? What am I going to have to do? And I would write, okay, so when are we going to do this? What is and learn about it. And then I go on ChatGPT for hours and understand it and understand what are the things that I can do to help give me any kind of edge that I can so I can have a better outcome.
Yeah. And this obviously applies to all kinds of aspects in life and including business. For those listening that have had a difficult time over the last couple of years, it's like, what percentage of your time during that difficulty did you spend focused on the difficulty versus focused on what are the steps that I need to take to forge ahead and to what is my plan to get through this difficult time? So it's a very important mental shift to strategizing and thinking through what can I do differently to have a different outcome than the one that I'm worried that I'm going to continue to have.
It's a great, it's a great example of that, Tim. And we talk about that. And when you look at the median production of a loan officer, so there's about 175,000 loan originators today. The median production is $4.1 million for the last 12 months, median. So it's half the originators out there, half of them are probably making less than $40,000 in the last 12 months. So that's tough. Okay. But then I remember, and this really stuck out, and you and I were just talking about it. I said, you said, I can't believe it. I'm talking to so many people and they're killing it. Why are they killing it? Well, obviously you're a phenomenal teacher and coach and they're working with you. So you deserve credit, but ultimately they deserve the credit too, because I think what they're doing, Tim, is they're not feeling bad for themselves, not feeling sorry for themselves. And they're really focusing on exactly what you and I are talking about. What do I do next? What can I do to make this better? And what activities, disciplines, tactics, what investments do I make in myself to improve so that I can? And people are killing it right now in the industry. But this applies to everything. But, we want to try and have an advantage. We want to try and do the best we can to win. And we want to try and be happy, making progress, getting an edge, investing in ourselves, doing the things that cause us to win, following and learning from people that help us to win. This is what we have to do.
Yeah, there is a group of originators that I know intimately that are doing very well. And the reason they're doing well was for the last 2 or 3 years when times were tough, they weren't focused on the fact that times were tough. They were focused on what are the things that I need to do to set myself up for success in the future. And those very things that they have done over the last 24 to 36 months have led them to really outstanding levels of production. I have a client who I interviewed yesterday that'll be aired in early December, Justin Padron, who's going to fund $70 million in production this year. He's only been in the business 8 years. And it's been what he has done over the last couple of years that have led him to funding $70 million this year and in 2025. So very, very important teaching point. Now, you mentioned Jim Rohn and networking and meeting people. I think that this is and we're going to get to the financial markets and your role with Fannie Mae and all those things in a moment. But I just want to touch upon this because I was actually just having a conversation with my wife, and I have two young stepchildren, 11 and 13, that are, I would say, more introverted than extroverted in their personality. And a part of it is that their upbringing has not taught them how to socialize in a way that, I think is ultimately ideal for them, because the more, and what I've been trying to explain to the kids is, like, when we do cool things, like I took my stepson diving for the first time last week. He's 13 years old and, he's living a dream day diving, and I've taken him out on boats where he got to actually drive the boat. And every time I remind him that, hey, Reed, the reason that you were able to drive a boat today, a 45-foot catamaran, in fact, is because I know the owner and he's my friend. And like, I give him these examples to try to teach him that success in life on virtually every level is correlative to the amount of real relationships that you have with people. And to your point, it then spawns, safety nets for us sometimes when we really need them. So share with us a little bit more about your whole beliefs around, like, networking, connecting, because I know that you're outstanding at it. I think it would benefit others to hear. Life's
about relationship. I mean, it just improves the quality of life exponentially. It's everywhere you go. And, my son, Dan, very well. He loves you. He's benefited so much by your coaching, and, he just thinks the world of you, that. And, you've gotten to know him, his personality. Everybody loves Dan. And you see the relationships he builds, right? I mean, he's a great relationship builder wherever he goes. It's great because he gets special treatment, not because he's paying people for it, because he just gets to know them. Because he makes them smile. He makes them smile. Instead of him being a customer, he's like a friend, and he asks about them. He thinks about that. He's very kind. He always gives me credit for that, because he says, Dad, I've seen you do this forever. And wherever we would go, we always felt special, whether it was going to Yankee games or wherever it was, restaurants. But he says, wherever we went, you were always treated special. And again, it wasn't because I paid anybody. It was because we made it like a friendship. And so he's done that. And my other three children do that too. So it's so freaking cool to see them kind of do that. So you're doing that with your stepchildren now. And, but wherever we are, taking that extra couple of minutes to make sure that relationship, that friendship is built, it changes everything. And, you build these relationships not by asking, you build the relationships by offering, by giving. That's how you build friendships and relationships. You without expecting anything in return, always want to try and do acts of kindness, whether it's thoughtfulness or whether it's, just doing something. That's the magic. That's how just life becomes so much more enjoyable.
It's like, I wonder how much, it'd be interesting to do a study over the course of, say, 12 months. If you took an originator and you had them perform 2 random acts of kindness every day for a year, what might happen to their loan volume? I can tell you what will happen to their life. They'll feel better about themselves, right? I mean, so just right out of the gate, it's a win for everybody, because you're going to feel good about yourself for opening up your heart and taking care of people. But I think that the business flows too, because you just have that many people out there that are invested into reciprocating because they like you. I mean, so that's an important point for people to give consideration to. So let's shift gears a little bit here.
I just want to say one thing, and the obstacle's right in here. That's the obstacle. The obstacle is, I don't know, I feel funny doing that, right? That's bullshit. Don't do that. People love that. Okay. So just get out of your own head and just start doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I didn't used to be a good networker or a relationship person, but I have developed that skill over the last couple of decades, I think. And now I know a lot of people, and I have a lot of people that are very kind to me because I've been kind to them first, to your point. So I say that only because for those that say, well, that's not my natural personality, it hasn't been, and it won't be if you continue to say that. But if you decide that you want to show up differently in the world, I think you'll be surprised as to how much it benefits you in so many ways because you're helping other people. Let's talk about the markets. So we're recording this in early December. It's going to be released right after the first of the year in 2026. I know that you don't like to make, ironclad predictions on things because it's a very, challenging market to predict into, especially with the competing forces of the Fed and President Trump. But where do you see things going in 2026, if you don't mind giving us a snapshot?
Well, my natural tendency is to be optimistic, so that's my natural tendency. And what did Yogi Berra say? Predictions are tough, especially about the future. But, I've had my share of incorrect predictions, and I will have my share of incorrect predictions. But I've also had a lot of good calls too, and I believe that I've made a lot more good calls than calls that were incorrect. But all of the things that I try to contemplate, they're not pulled out of my rear end. There's an enormous amount of work that goes into why I believe this should be the trend or the outcome. That said, God has different plans for things, regardless of how much work you put into it at times. And we could be proven very foolish, as I have been proven foolish in some of my forecasts and predictions, but you could also be rewarded too. I'm very optimistic about 2026. And there's a lot of reasons why. I think a lot of things are falling into place. I think the rates will be better for us in 2026. And we don't need them to be much better. As we're recording this, let's call rates 6 3/8. I think, man, we get under 6%. It does a lot of things for a lot of reasons. If you look at statistically, there were a tremendous amount of loans done at around 6 7/8. You get to around 6%, especially 5 7/8. Put a 5 handle on it, big trigger. Refinancing. The ICE data says that you'll have over 5 million refinance transactions eligible with the following criteria: 720 FICO, at least an 80 LTV, and these loans would benefit by at least 0.75% that they'd save. So you've got a lot of loans out there that I think will be triggered with about a 3/8 to a 0.5% drop in rates. Let's call it a 0.5% drop in rates. In addition to that, you're going to also have the benefit of LTV. People don't think about this. We put it in our strike rate tool, but people who did a 95 LTV 3 years ago or a 90 3 years ago. So what's happened in the past 3 years? Now, every zip code's different, I know, but across the United States, you've had in the last 3 years, you've had about 11% appreciation. So, and even if you've had less than that, remember in the last 3 years, you got about 3% amortization naturally. So you don't have to do anything with that. So you've already improved your LTV by 3% without doing anything on a 30-year. And now you add, if you get about 7% appreciation, you take a 95 to an 85, huge MI savings. You take a 90 to an 80, eliminate MI. Combine that with a lower rate, you start saving people a lot of money. So I think it'll be favorable from a refinance standpoint, but from a purchase standpoint too, there are so many people that, it's been said that, okay, look, we're going to have a tough time due to the fact that you got a 3% mortgage, it's too much to make that jump. Well, guess what? Life happens. And for a lot of people, what it means is that they wanted to get married, or they had a child or another child, or they want a backyard, or they want a different neighborhood. And maybe they'll withhold those decisions if you're looking at going from 3 to 7, but maybe 3 to 5 and 7/8, I might swallow the pill at that and go ahead and do that. Tim, I hear a lot of people saying, what's the solution for the housing market? Oh, lower prices. That's the worst thing that could happen. All those people tell you when they say we want lower prices is they've never lived through a lower price environment because they're freaking clueless. They don't know you can't get an appraisal done. Nobody wants to buy homes when they're declining. Be careful what you wish for. The answer is we need lower rates. We're going to get that. And the other answer is time. And we've had some time. Why time? Because incomes increase. And somebody might say, well, if incomes go up at 5% and appreciation is 5%, you're not gaining ground. You are gaining ground. You got to remember the math. You don't use all of your income. You use about a third of your income. So that has a multiplier effect. So you gravitate, you catch up faster, and gravity holds the mortgage payment different than the income growth. So there are things that are working in our favor that are about to come to fruition. Now, why will rates come down is the big question. Inflation. We know that the biggest component, 33% of core CPI and 14% of core PCE is owner's equivalent rent, and the shelter components even bring those up more. Those are all starting to finally, because of the enormous freaking stupid lags, the way they do it, are starting to work in our favor. So rents have been coming down now for about 2 years, and they've been actually negative. But here's the thing that the way that it's structured is the BLS, for whatever reason, they can't look at the whole country. So they look at only 1/6 of the country a month. That means the other 5/6 of the country, there's no change. Even if rents are dropping, you don't feel it. You only feel 1/6 a month. And then it's also based upon when was that lease signed. So it could go back. So Tim, you could have like a 1.5 year delay. So we're now getting numbers where the rental market really was a 1.5 years ago. We have this heavy weighting within these inflation reports finally working in our favor. And that should keep inflation down. The job market, don't believe what people are saying. Oh, it's great. The job market's solid. Bullshit. Job market is in trouble, and AI is going to make it even more difficult. Hiring is not happening out there. It's true that we're not seeing people getting let go, but that's the next shoe to drop. So many hiring freezes out there. So you got, you stop hiring, and then the next step you got to do is you start letting people go. And efficiencies and technologies will cause more of that. So you're going to start to see the unemployment rate rise. You're going to see the Fed have to react. We're going to get a new Fed chair in May. That's probably going to be Kevin Hassett. But we're also probably going to get maybe an additional Fed member that will come on that will be more dovish. I think that we're going to see the Fed bring interest rates down. They're going to have to. I think that inflation will also help us. The job market will also be favorable. I think we get that 0.5%, maybe more, lower in interest rates. The other thing, Tim, is mortgage spreads, which have been coming down. If the Fed cuts rates, it brings mortgage spreads down even further. That means that we probably can get to around 5.75, maybe 5 5/8. I don't know. It's hard to come up with a number, but we can get below 6%. And you have to get there sustainably. I hate these people that say, oh, we saw mortgage rates drop, but then purchase applications didn't rise. Well, that's because you're a freaking idiot. If you say, the media is just so freaking stupid, is because, look, what do you think happens? Mortgage rates drop, and somebody says, let's put a contract and a mortgage application in tomorrow. No, we all know the process. It's got to stay there for a while till people, A, become aware, B, start shopping, C, find someplace, D, then start negotiating, E, put a contract together, F, put in a mortgage application. That takes time. So you need rates to come down and sustainably be there for a month or 2 months or 3 months. We're getting close to that phase now where if you get there and if it drops another leg, you give it another couple of months, we could see the spring market be a really good one.
So I have a question on the inflation front. I know the numbers, I see what's reported, and yet at the same time, it doesn't feel to me like the numbers are accurate. Like as a consumer, when I look back over the course of, say, the last 4 years, like I can cite examples of places in the economy where, I've seen things go up by 40, 50% in price. So how accurate do you believe those inflation numbers to be? Because the 3+% thing, I'm not really buying it. It feels like it's more than that.
Okay. So there's the inflation has to be looked at two ways. There's a rate of change inflation, which us as people in the mortgage industry and trying to be watching interest rates, we have to be very concerned with, because that's what really matters. And that's what counts, is the rate of change. So that's what will influence bond prices, influence interest rates, and ultimately influence real estate values and prices. Because if interest rates decline, you turn up the level on demand, and supply will not be able to be ramped up. Builders have slowed down. So you get a period of time where increased demand, supply doesn't catch up, prices go up, it creates an opportunity. So interest rates are going to be influenced to a great extent by those inflation numbers in rate of change. Now, rate of change, I know it says a core PC is 2.9%. That's the most closely watched one by the Fed. but it's not really 2.9 because tariffs are 4/10 or 3/10 or 5/10. It's hard to put your finger on it. Tariff's not inflation. Tariff is a one-time price adjustment. Inflation is like a staircase that is persistent, up, up, up. Prices go up, up, up. It's like a staircase that goes up, right, infinitely. A tariff is a one-step staircase. That's it. It's one step. So you feel inflation once, but then you have to be smart enough and wise enough. Some Fed members are, some Fed members aren't, to look past it. And let's not set policy long-term for a one-time price adjustment. So that's the first thing, is understanding that tariffs are overstating inflation. Secondarily, the lag in rents is clearly overstating inflation. If you look at the real data, remember the way the BLS does it, they haven't changed their methodology since 1985. 1985, okay? It's gonna be 41 years and you haven't improved the methodology. Okay, in 1985, did we have CoreLogic? Did we have Apartment List? Did we have Zillow? All the other ones that are out there that give you real data. And it is overstated. You can measure it because you know what the real data is and you know what is reported in the BLS because of the lags that we talked about. The data is ridiculous. It's showing 4% year over year inflation when the real number is below 2%. I'm on the board of Fannie Mae. We've got these numbers. It's less than 2% rental inflation if you take a look at new rents, if you take a look at single family, you take a look at multifamily, you take a look at renewal rents on single family, you multiply it all together, you weight it accordingly, you go through all the gyrations, which we do, it's less than 2%. But yet, because it says 4% in the BLS, again, the heavy weight of it in CPI, the heavy weight of it in PCE is artificially making that number bigger. Too bad the Fed, many members are not intelligent enough to understand this. Some are not. Then the other one is another thing called portfolio management fees. Most people don't know about this, but it's our job to go where people don't go and dig really, really deep into every number. If you have your money with a mutual fund or whatever, or 401k, you know that gets assessed the portfolio management fee. Well, because the stock market's been on a tear, the portfolio management fee might be 1%. It still remains at 1%, but because your assets have grown, you're getting assessed a greater portfolio management fee. Now, you're not paying that out of your pocket, okay? It's assessed against your asset, and you're happy to pay it because your assets are going up. So this is a stupid metric to tell us that inflation is high, and because the stock market has risen so dramatically, it is accounting for a 0.3% overstatement. You put all that together, inflation is really at 2%. It's at the Fed's target, so they should be cutting rates. But they need to look through this. They need to be smarter. The Fed tends to look in the rearview mirror, and that's why we have boom and bust cycles, because they're always looking backwards and not looking forwards, and they're responding to what was. It's like, imagine if you got in the shower, okay, and you turn it on and it's ice cold. So if you said, shit, man, we got to get it hot, so you put it all the way hot because it was cold, eventually it's going to get too hot. And they say, okay, it's too hot. Let's put it all the way cold. You don't get it right. What you should be doing, the right approach is, okay, it's ice cold. Let me set it to thinking that if I set it at this level, it's going to warm up. So don't put it all the way hot. Let's keep it here, or don't put it all the way cold. Let's put it. But the Fed tends to just see what it was and respond to that, instead of looking at where we're going. That would be the thing to do. Now, the last point, and I'm sorry, Tim, but all this is so important to explain, is there's two types of inflation is where I started. One is the rate of change, the important one for us as economists and as mortgage professionals and those who want to create wealth for our customers, because that's ultimately what we should be viewing ourselves as, people who create wealth, not who get a loan done, because that's what our job is. Now, there's also cumulative inflation. Cumulative inflation is what you feel when you go grocery shopping. It's what you said, because it feels like it's more. It feels like it's more because inflation's cumulative, because the rate of change slowed down, but that's on top of everything you had. The inflation that we got from the ridiculous amount of QE and the ridiculous amount of things that went into the economy from all of these nutso programs that they didn't have to do after COVID, to overly juice the economy and overstimulate it, that caused all the inflation. And then you had a Fed who was looking in the rearview mirror, didn't see it coming, going the dial super cold to super hot, okay, and then not saying, hey, let's set it here. What the Fed did was they kept interest rates at zero for way too long. They kept QE way too long, and they created this inflation. That's what people are feeling. When people say, I go to the supermarket and I say, that's because you had cumulative inflation for the last few years, And now the rate of change, it's slowed down, but it's just on top of this. Okay. Now, could prices come down? Do you want that? No, you do not want that. There's a reason why the Fed wants 2% inflation and not deflation, because you kill the economy. That's why people who think the housing market, we need lower prices, it kills the housing market. Nobody wants to buy depreciating assets. You can't get a mortgage when prices are coming down. If you were going to go shopping and somebody said, hey, you know what, you want to buy that suit, but wait, on Friday, that suit's coming down in price and it's going on sale. You don't buy it today, you wait till Friday. But what if on Thursday, they said, wait, I know there was a sale Friday, but there's going to be a bigger sale the following. You don't buy. And by doing that, you absolutely destroy the economy. You destroy people getting more increases and improving their living standards. You do not want deflation, and you do not want prices coming down.
That last analogy was a really good one, and that made sense to me. And I'm having this conversation with you as a bit of a novice, so some of my questions are coming from my own.
Bro, you're like one of the smartest people I know. So don't shortchange yourself. You're one of the most brilliant people I know. So you're.
So thank you. I want to revisit the issue of tariffs, though. For you to say that it's not inflation is puzzling to me, because if we take an item and we increase the cost of that item by 20%, I realize it's a one-time increase, but how is that not still inflation to the American consumer?
It's cumulative inflation. Yes, it is. It's all part of the cumulative inflation, but it is not based on the rate of change. Just think about it let's take that. If that were a truth, then what about from 40 years ago or 80 years ago or 130 years ago? What about price increases that was that? How do we battle those? You don't think about those. Those happen. That's where the price is. All you can control or attempt to control is the rate of change from here.
Got it.
And that's what the market looks at. Okay. So, but that's why you have to look at the tariffs as, yes, it increases prices. Yes. One time. But it's different than inflation, because inflation is that persistent one. And if inflation ratchets up to 3 or 4 or 5%, that's what creates the craziness. A one-time adjustment doesn't create craziness. It's a one-time adjustment. When countries have gotten in deep trouble, it's because they let inflation get out of control. And then if you ever were to hit something like 30, 40, 50% inflation, it becomes something called hyperinflation, where it then runs away and it can't get into control. You can read history. I devour everything historical about inflation and how it was. And, that's why you have to be careful, and the Fed has to be vigilant not to let it get out of control. And then people start to become very unhappy, and it loses elections if you have inflation that's persistently higher. But a one-time price adjustment, while it's not great, if you can keep inflation around 2% on a yearly basis, beyond that, you should be in decent shape.
So tell us a little bit about your role with Fannie Mae. And
I will. One more thing about the tariffs. Remember that we only import about 14% of goods. Okay. And the average tariff rate would be about 10% to 12%. So when you start thinking about it, it's not a devastating impact. And then it's also mitigated by the fact that some suppliers are absorbing it. Some of the exporters are absorbing it. So when it comes down to the consumer, while it is going to be felt, it becomes to a level that's much, much smaller than a lot of people think. It's not like everything in the world's tariffed. Profit margin is not tariffed. The pieces that go in assembly here, those aren't tariffed. You have to kind of really understand what is being tariffed, because you could say tariffs 15% or 10% or 20%. That seems like a big number, but when you really break it down to what does the consumer feel out of their pocket, it might be 1% or 2%. So just wanted to kind of break that down. So I apologize, bro. Fannie Mae. What an honor to be on the board. It's a Fortune 25 company, and there's only 8 board members. So to be one of the 8 board members is huge. The people there are really smart. They're really good. And, what I really want to try and do is do my best to bring a voice of understanding of A, the financial markets, and B, the mortgage industry. And, having been an originator, having owned a mortgage company, and having the privilege to be connected to the mortgage industry the way that I am, as a speaker, as a teacher, as having a service that helps people, and all the relationships that I have with people like you and so many other great people. is to bring that voice to the boardroom and have them gain insight that they might not be exposed to.
And what is it that are you comfortable talking about what you and I have discussed about some of the things that you're working on?
I have to be a little careful here because there's a lot going on. And I'll tell you what's public, what the president said is public, is that they're really seriously thinking about some form of a public offering. Okay. And because of that, we got to be like super careful. But it also means that, as you are well aware of, anything can impact valuations. So, it's like a Rubik's Cube. If you turn this, it could affect a lot of other things exponentially. So one of the pain points that I, was working on, and Bill Pulte put this out there, and so it's public knowledge that I wanted to try and address the LLPAs, in a narrow way that could get some relief and get some things done that make sense. And worked really hard with a lot of good people at Fannie, and we put some ideas together, and they're being reviewed. And president's got to decide what he wants to do with that in conjunction with all the other moving pieces. And then, you've also got to be careful too, because, something could be viewed in this divisive political situation as, oh, well, that's a bad thing for you to be doing, a good thing for you to be doing. So there's a lot for these folks to think about before they agree to do something and move forward. And of course, with the backdrop that we all know about, I'm trying to make good suggestions, and hopefully they'll be contemplated and thought about as far as, how can it be good for the industry, good for housing, good for people. But when it happens, and to the degree it happens, that's beyond my authority to make decisions on.
Well, I'm just really happy for you that after all the years of service that you've done in this industry, that you were bestowed such an honor to be in such a prestigious position. You deserve it.
Thank you.
The industry benefits from having your voice in the room. I'm certain of that. And I hope you're having fun. It sounds like you're having a lot of fun doing it, which is the best part about it.
I actually, it's really, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for it. And I really like the people there. I think that they're smart. I have a lot of respect for them. I get along great with them. And it's nice because I think there's a real willingness to want to do things and work together. Being in conservatorship makes it a very, very different animal than any other company. Another company, hey, this is a good idea. This will be good for our customers. It'll be good for our business. It'll be good. Let's do it, right? Not when you're in conservatorship, because there are certain things that you limited that can be done by the director. But that's going to go under a microscope. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the other considerations with potential offering. And then there's a lot of it that requires congressional approval. So the simple decisions that you think can be made, and Congress can't seem to be on the same page on too many things these days anyway. So it's really like handcuffs to try and do stuff. Now, if Fannie comes out of conservatorship, if it ever does, then there's a lot that can be done that I think could be beneficial to the industry.
Exciting stuff. Thanks so much, bro, for taking the time to teach today and to give us a little bit of insight as to what we might be looking forward to seeing in 2026. I hope it comes true. The industry deserves lower rates and more volume after a very long road. And we're very lucky to have you as the teacher in this industry without question.
Well, one of many that are really wonderful people and very gifted. What's really great about it, Tim, is that you think about a lot of the leaders in the industry. They're just great people, and I don't want to leave anybody out because there's so many of them, just yourself comes to mind, a guy like Dale Vermillion comes. I mean, it's just people with great hearts. There's so many that are out there that really just want to benefit the industry, want to do good, want to help people. We're really lucky. And I think that the vast, vast majority of loan originators out there are really good people, really want to be honest about things and help their clients. And we've got such a great industry. We do deserve a little bit of a break. And I think we get it. There's no guarantees. And again, I'm optimistic in nature anyway, but I think we get a very good year ahead, Tim.
fingers crossed. And most importantly, for 2026 to be a year of just health and joy for you with all that you've been through. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for listening. We look forward to having many episodes to come throughout 2026. Happy New Year to everyone. And we'll talk to you real soon.
Can I just say one thing just for people that are listening? I just want you guys to know, first of all, so many of you have been so kind to me, but the guy here that's hosting this, just the character of this man to always be following up on me and making sure that I'm okay, helping me out when the news wasn't so good and going through some stuff and being there to share with me. I love you, Tim, and I'll never forget that. I think people should just know the character that you've displayed always as just a great, great human being and a great friend to me.
Thank you, my friend. It's a great pleasure. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.